I'm Mark Golub, and in the news is the publication of a major study of American Jewry conducted by the Pew Research Center, and they entitled it A Portrait of Jewish Americans, which has many in the Jewish world buzzing about its findings. You should know, by the way, that for many years, the Jewish community itself has conducted studies of American Jewry virtually every 10 years, every decade. The last such study was done in the year 2000, and the next one was scheduled for 2010. But apparently, the findings in 2000 were so troubling that it was decided not to do a similar study in 2010. And so a number of American Jews approached the independent research and polling organization, the Pew Research Center, and commissioned Pew to do a major study of how American Jews feel about being Jewish, how they feel about Judaism, about the state of Israel, and about how Jews behave in America in terms of ritual observance and what's often seen as the most important of all Jewish indices, intermarriage. And what did the Pew study find? Well, if you go to the Pew Research Center, and they have a website, and you look at their October 1, 2013 Portrait of Jewish Americans, their opening line reads, "American Jews overwhelmingly say they are proud to be Jewish and have a strong sense of belonging to the Jewish people." But the survey also suggests that Jewish identity is changing in America, where 1 in 5 Jews, 22%, now describe themselves as having no religion. In other words, the Pew study finds that 22% of American Jews say they have no involvement at all with Judaism. Well, for some insight into how the Pew study was conducted and to clarify some of its findings, we're most pleased to be joined from Washington, D.C. by Alan Cooperman, Deputy Director for the Pew Research Center's Religion and Public Life Project. Alan, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Mark. It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Alan, I know you do this all the time. You often are on television. I just want to give our audience a sense of who you are before we begin. First of all, are you Jewish?
Yes, of course.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Massachusetts, in the Berkshire Hills.
Okay. And
Temple Anshe Amunim in Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
Very, very nice.
Childhood synagogue where I had my bar mitzvah.
Do you remember your bar mitzvah fondly?
Yes, I still know that parsha, Lech Lecha. Yes.
You had Lech, one of the all-time great sedras. By the way, do you remember the Haftarah?
No, I don't remember that. No, that's not fair. No.
Okay, I won't quiz you any further. Very, very well done. And where do you live now?
I live in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So, as Deputy Director here, talk to me a little bit about the methodology. Can you tell our audience, how did Pew go about researching, or whom did you talk to? How did you talk to people to get enough information to produce the study you produced?
Sure, that's a great question. Well, we do surveys mostly by telephone, and this was a survey done by random digit dialing on landlines and cell phones. We conducted interviews in English and in Russian in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. The survey was in the field for more than 4 months this year. It's a very, very expensive and difficult endeavor. It may not seem so to many of us who are Jewish, but from a statistical point of view, Jews are a rare population in America. They're about 2% of the U.S. population. So to get a nationally representative sample of Jews is difficult and expensive. What we did, Mark, very simply is we called people around the country and we asked them a series of screening questions.
Okay, Alan, forgive me for interrupting. How did you know whom to call? How did you choose what phone number to dial?
The phone numbers are dialed at random. We don't choose who to call. They're dialed at random within indexes or telephone exchanges. So geographically, we know where we're calling, and we can apportion the calls to various parts of the country, but we don't have any individuals in mind. This is not a survey that's done of people who have identified as Jewish. We called, in fact, we screened more than 70,000 people as we did interviews with we completed screening interviews with more than 70,000 people selected at random around the country. And we asked them a series of questions.
All right, let me make sure I understand. If you called 70,000 people.
No, we didn't call. We called many more than that. We completed screening interviews.
I see. Okay.
More than 70,000.
Okay, but in essence, you randomly select a number, and somebody says to you, hello. Is the first question, after you identify yourself, is the first question, are you Jewish?
No. So this is what I was about to say. We have a series of screening questions. And the first question, actually, the first couple of questions are warm-up questions. They're just questions about, we tell them we're conducting a survey on behalf of the Pew Research Center, and then we say, tell me about your community. Are you satisfied with your community? We ask them whether they're a homeowner, just a couple of warm-up questions. And then we start in earnest in the questions that we're really concerned with. And the first of those is, what is your present religion, if any? Are you Protestant, Roman Catholic, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, atheist, agnostic, something else, or nothing in particular? And those who said they were Jewish in answer to that question then went immediately to get the full questionnaire.
I see. Are they the 70,000? Do they qualify then within the 70,000?
Yes, they would qualify for the full questionnaire. Those who didn't say that they were Jewish in answer to that first question, who said anything else, got a second screening question, which was, aside from religion, do you consider yourself Jewish or partially Jewish? And if they said yes, then they got the full questionnaire.
Very interesting.
And wait, there's a third screening question.
Okay.
Because the people who didn't say yes to that got a third screening question, and that is, do you have a Jewish parent, or were you raised Jewish? And if anybody who said yes to any of those questions got the full survey, however, and let me be clear about this, that doesn't necessarily mean for analytical purposes in our report that we considered them Jewish. Okay? Now, they're all people who, in one way or another, could be considered Jewish. But there are people in this survey who identify as Jewish by religion. There are people who say they're atheist or agnostic, but have a Jewish parent, have no other religion other than being atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular, and who consider themselves Jewish. So they're also in our main Jewish category.
Okay, I want you to stay with that for one moment. This is obviously a question that many Jews have who have seen your study, and just you should know, I was speaking about your study this past weekend to Jewish groups, and the kind of question you're answering now was exactly their concern. They wanted to know how in the world you identified respondents, and you're helping us understand that, and they wanted to know how Pew defined a Jew. And before, I want to ask one preliminary question. To what extent did you have help from Jewish organizations or Jewish leadership in creating the survey questions themselves?
All right. Well, so you're asking me two questions at once, and I would like to explain our categories and how we did the survey. But let me step back and say, Mark, at the beginning in your intro, which was a lovely intro, thank you very much, you said that Jewish groups commissioned the Pew Research Center to do the survey. And I'm sorry, but that's not the case. Nobody can commission the Pew Research Center to do a survey. We're a nonprofit, foundation-funded organization, a non-advocacy organization, and we have no clients, no advertisers, and nobody commissions anything we do. Our mission, again, foundation supported, is to provide good, reliable data. We never take advocacy positions, and so I can't comment on what people should take away from the survey in terms of what should be done differently, what the Jewish community should do, anything like that. We don't get into that areas. We stick with the data. The goal here is to provide good data.
Okay, I'm very glad you clarified that for us. And you're correct, by the way. I should tell our audience, the word commissioned was my own word, and it was my mistake. Then how in the world did Pew decide to do this study?
Okay, so it is true that Jane Eisner, the editor of The Forward, came to us shortly after the national Jewish organizations, specifically the federations, the Jewish Federations of North America, decided not to repeat the 2000-2001 National Jewish Population Survey. She came to us and said, well, why doesn't Pew do this? And we thought about it. We looked into it. We've done previous surveys of other religious groups, lots of religious groups in the United States, including some very small religious groups. And we decided, yes, we should do this. It's very expensive, time-consuming, and difficult survey. So it took us a long time. It took us basically 2 years from start to finish. And yes, we did create an advisory panel. The advisory panel included mainly experts on the socio-demography of American Jewry, the most eminent Jewish pollsters and sociologists in the country, at least some of the most eminent. And we worked with them closely, but this was not commissioned by Jewish organizations, was not done on behalf of Jewish organizations.
Okay, I'm very pleased with the clarification. You know, I just want to press you one more moment on this. Pew has been around a long time, correct?
The Pew Research Center has been around a dozen years. The Pew Charitable Trusts have been around longer.
Okay, so in essence, this was the first time in Pew's 12-year history that there was this kind of opportunity to study the American Jewish community?
Well, previous surveys that we've done have, some of them, been large enough to be able to talk about, to be able to analyze Jews separately. And also in the past, we've been able to, at times, aggregate data from multiple surveys. So this is not the first time that we've had data on American Jews. However, it is the first time we've had what you might consider a purpose-built survey focused solely on understanding American Jewry, and particularly how American Jews identify as Jewish. The heart of the survey really is about Jewish identity in America today, the various ways that Jews identify as Jewish, and of course their beliefs and practices and social attitudes, political attitudes, etc.
Okay, and you said basically you created some kind of advisory board that did include, they did have Jewish input as you put the questions together, correct?
Yes, I would call them experts. All of them, in fact, are Jewish, but it was their expertise rather than their Jewishness that was essential to us. There are people like Professor Stephen Cohen of New York University, Professor Len Sachs of Brandeis University, Jack Wertheimer of the Jewish Theological Seminary, Jane Eisner of The Forward, editor of The Forward, Sarah Ben-Or from the West Coast, Elka Abrahamson from the Wexner Foundation. The list is in our survey, 11 people altogether, a very eminent panel. They were terrifically helpful. We also went to experts outside of the panel on specific questions. And of course, we have we've been doing surveys of religion for quite a while, and we're known for them. We have a lot of internal expertise.
Okay. So as you put this study together, what were your underlying definitions of what a Jew is, who a Jew is, so that as you did try to either include or exclude individuals in the survey, was there an overall philosophy that expressed whom Pew felt belonged in this study as a Jew?
Yes, that's an extremely important question. Thank you for allowing me to explain that. Our philosophy, if you will, was to cast a very wide net and essentially to interview anybody who might be considered Jewish. In addition, to preserve in the data and in our report the ability of individual readers and of other researchers to apply whatever definitions they want. So in analyzing the results of the survey, yes, we had to come up with our own definition, which we tried to explain, actually multiple definitions or multiple categories. But we also tried to make it clear and to allow people to look at the data and see how it would be different if they used a different definition. So let me try to explain this, because it's a little bit, it's easier to see it in the details than in theory. So as I said, we interviewed, or in the screening questions, we captured anybody who said their religion is Jewish, or that aside from religion, they consider themselves Jewish, or even partially Jewish, or anybody who said they have a Jewish parent or were raised Jewish. So there are people who have a Jewish parent or were raised Jewish who today do not consider themselves Jewish, they're Christian. We did give them the survey. We did not include them in our main Jewish category.
Okay.
Have a religion other than Judaism, any religion other than Judaism, you're not included in our main Jewish survey, in our main Jewish category. You are included in the survey. In addition, you could be atheist or agnostic or say your religion is nothing in particular. But if you say that, but you also say that you consider yourself Jewish, and you say you had a Jewish parent or were raised Jewish, then you're also in our main Jewish category. Main Jewish category, the group that, for analytical purposes, we call Jews. Our net Jewish category consists of two parts. What we call Jews by religion, people who just said their religion is Jewish. And then the second group, the group that you identified as comprising 22% of all American Jews, that second group is what people might think of as secular Jews or cultural Jews. These are the people who said that their religion is atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular, but who said they consider themselves Jewish and they have direct Jewish ancestry.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification. It was wonderfully done. One more question about the numbers. You used the number 70,000.
Yes.
When I read the Pew study, it said that there were 3,745 phone calls made from February to June of 2013. How does the 3,745 relate to the 70,000?
That I think you're talking about the number of net Jews. So out of the 70,000, we gave the full interview to more than 5,000 people, of whom about 3,500, 3,475, not 3,745, but just under 3,500 are in our net Jewish category. That is either Jews by religion, people who say their religion is Jewish, or what you might think of as secular Jews, people who say their religion is nothing, that is, they're atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular, but who consider themselves Jewish and who had at least one Jewish parent.
Okay. You made something clear, and I want to make sure our audience understands, and I understood it before we even began speaking, but I do want to emphasize this. Alan Cooperman is not here to interpret the results for us. He is not here to prognosticate about the Jewish future because of the study. He is presenting a study in a professional manner, and he's allowing the Jewish community now to draw the conclusions. Is that fair, Alan, to say?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Interpret in the sense of I won't talk about the implications or what should be done, but I can analyze. I can tell you what I think is interesting.
So I am going to try to limit my questions to you to what I think are analytical questions, not what do they mean for Jewish life. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. One of the things that your study seemed to show is that there were 22% of American Jews who, in your definition, are Jews. Either they would identify as Jews in some way. They would identify as Jews. 22% of them, your study shows, at the same time say they are not involved with Judaism.
No, that's not exactly right. The 22%, this what we'll call Jews of no religion, you might think of them as secular Jews, they told us in answer to a question about what is your religion, that they're atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. That doesn't mean that they're not at all involved. So, in fact, by comparison with Jews by religion, people who say their religion is Jewish, they tend to be much less involved. But I wouldn't say they're not involved at all. So for example, we ask about synagogue membership. Well, a much higher proportion of people who identify their religion as Jewish are synagogue members. But among the people who say they have no religion, some of them are synagogue members.
Okay, this is very important. I hope our audience is hearing what you say. I didn't mean to step on it. Because the opening sentence of the Pew report, as appears on your website, says that 1 in 5 Jews now describe themselves as having no religion.
Right.
This would suggest to a reader that 20%, 22%, whatever, of American Jews have nothing to do with a synagogue or Judaism. You're saying that's not the inference that this finding was meant to imply.
Well, right. I mean, maybe if you read the first paragraph and then stopped right there, you might misunderstand it. But the overview of the survey goes on to explain exactly what these terms mean and what we mean that by saying they say they have no religion. That is, we asked them what is their religion, and they said they had none. They called themselves atheists, agnostics, or nothing in particular. They did not identify as Jewish by religion.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that they have no religious beliefs. And by the way, among those who said their religion is Jewish, some of those people also told us they don't believe in God. So some of those people, and some of those people don't go to synagogues. That's why we don't use the term, we don't call them religious Jews versus, say, non-religious Jews. The terms are a little bit clunky, but they're very precise to the meaning of the survey. Jews by religion, people who identify their religion as Jewish, and Jews of no religion, those who say they don't have any religion, any particular religion, but they do identify as Jewish. And yes, many of them, or at least some of them, are active in the Jewish community, but not nearly so active on average.
Okay, I'm still having a little trouble. I want you to help me, and you're doing it very well, so I apologize for having the trouble, but I want you to do it one more time. I want to understand more for our audience what this 22% represents, because Alan, and I did read much more than the opening paragraph, that's all I quoted here, but there seemed to be a suggestion that the Pew report was making, not in terms of any kind of conclusion for the Jewish future, but simply saying in terms of where is Jewish life today? That although Jews say they're proud of being Jewish, which again in the study was overwhelming, that while Jews say they are proud to be Jewish and they feel an identity to the Jewish people, in contrast, the Pew report says, 22% now say they have no religion. From a Jewish perspective, that's a difficult concept to grasp, because anybody who's involved in Jewish life with any depth understands that the term Jewish is not a religious term to begin with. It's a term of family. It's a term of people. And interestingly enough, in your unaffiliated study, you found that 30% of American Jews are unaffiliated. By the way, I find that number very low. But you found that 30% of American Jews are unaffiliated, have no affiliation with any movement of Judaism, which is higher than the 22% who say they have no, I guess they're telling you that they are atheist or agnostic. And there are many Jews, who are devoted to Jewish life, who are committed to the state of Israel, who are involved in the Jewish community, who even attend synagogue and say the brachot. And yet for them, they would say agnostic, of course, and even some would say atheist. So one more time, I want you to try to help us understand, what is that 22%?
Okay, so Mark, I think you said it yourself, although frankly, I think you contradicted yourself. Being Jewish can be a matter of religion to people. And for some people, in fact, for many Jews, it's either not a matter of religion or not solely a matter of religion. So it's important to bear that in mind when conducting a survey of Jews, or even looking at trying to understand what being Jewish means in America or anywhere in the world today. There are people who identify being Jewish as their religion. There are other people for whom being Jewish isn't primarily a matter of religion. In fact, we asked in the survey a question. And we said, of all the people in the survey, we asked them, is being Jewish mainly a matter of religion, or mainly a matter of ancestry, or mainly a matter of culture? And it was a minority of Jews who said it's mainly a matter of religion. Not none, but a minority. The majority of Jews, even the majority of Jews who identified themselves as Jewish by religion, 55% of them, said being Jewish is mainly a matter of ancestry and or culture. So we tried to capture both. We didn't want a narrow definition of who is a Jew. And a narrow definition to my mind, or possible definition, which you can use. You can view our data, if you want, just by Jewish parentage. You can view it even just by matrilineality. That is, you can look just at the respondents who said they had a Jewish mother. You can also look at it just by religion. We tried to capture all of these things. Now, the portion of the net Jewish population that identifies as Jewish, but not by religion, that 22% that you focused on, that's a really interesting figure for a couple of reasons. First of all, it does seem to be considerably higher than in the past. Comparisons with previous surveys are difficult, but we can even look at the data in our own survey, in this survey, just by generation. And so if you look at the members of the greatest generation, 93% of Jews in the greatest generation say their religion is Jewish. That is, they identify as Jews by religion. And only 7% identify as Jewish, but not by religion. Say they're atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. And you look at the millennial generation, the latest generation, the youngest generation of Jews in America, fully a third of them, 32%, say they have no particular religion, yet identify as Jewish and have a Jewish parent. And the generations in between, it follows directly that pattern.
Excuse me. By the way, I'm curious to hear what you think my contradiction was. But there's a difference between somebody saying I'm an agnostic or an atheist as opposed to saying I have no religion. And it seems to me you're conflating those two.
Well, it depends what you mean by no religion. No religion in this context, in answer to the religion question, does not mean that they have no religious beliefs or no religious practices.
What does it mean?
It means that when you ask them what their religion is, they are saying none. No religious identification. And that should be clear in the survey report.
Okay. And you feel somebody who says to you, I have no religion, is not contradicting themselves by being part of a synagogue?
Well, look, in surveys, the way people self-identify on a range of things, not just Jews, but all people, the way they self-identify does not always line up exactly with what they then say about their self-reported beliefs and practices. And it may even appear to other people that, to outsiders, that someone says is contradictory. I don't necessarily think that it's contradictory for someone to say that they consider themselves atheist or agnostic or nothing in particular and yet be Jewish. Here's where I think...
By the way, I agree with you, but that's not what you said.
No.
What you said was somebody who says they're atheist and they're agnostic has no religion, but at the same time, they're part of religious Jewish life. If they're part of a synagogue.
That's correct. So the story doesn't end with their self-identification. That's just the first question in the screening. And it does help us create our categories. But it's not sufficient to be in the category, and it's not by any means the only thing we asked. We asked dozens and dozens of questions, and we can tell you about all kinds of things about people's beliefs and practices. But the categorization of Jew by religion versus Jew of no religion is based in part on how people answer the question, what is your religion? And it's important, and there's a big difference. There's a big difference in the way that the Jews of no religion, that is what you might think of as secular Jews or cultural Jews, behave and what they tell us about their beliefs and practices. It's also very interesting in the way they're rearing their children. So let's get to some of the interesting findings here. Because among Jews by religion, those who say their religion is Jewish, more than 90% of them who have children in the home are raising minor children, say they are raising those children Jewish in some way. The vast majority of them are raising those children in the Jewish faith, that is, Jewish by religion. But more than 90% say at least they're raising their children Jewish in some way. Among what I'm calling the Jews of no religion, again, those who said they consider themselves Jewish, they have at least one Jewish parent, but today they have no particular religion. Right? Among those folks, 2/3 say they are not raising their children Jewish in any way. That is, not only are they not raising them in the Jewish faith, they're not raising them as so-called secular or cultural Jews either. 2/3 are not raising them Jewish in any way. That's one of the important findings in the survey. That's why one of the reasons why the categories are important, and they are revealing about beliefs and practices.
Well, what I find fascinating about the study, and again, this is not about asking you to do any prognostication or what are the implications, is that each individual question reveals something about Jewish life. And when I did my own study of your study, I found that certain things didn't seem to jive, but it didn't bother me because I felt that each individual question was giving us, to use that phrase, a snapshot of a piece of the American Jewish community. And so, I saw this raising children Jewish. Family with Judaism are doing it, based on your study, at about 90%. And as you just said, people who have said to you they have no religion at all, a third of them, a third of people who say they have no religion at all, are at the same time raising their children with Judaism.
That's right.
I found that a much more interesting number than 2/3 of them were not.
Right.
It was shocking to me that any of them, Jewish parents who say they have no religion, a third of them are raising their children with Judaism. So, again, I find every line of your study to be just a wealth of insight. And again, snapshots. They're all snapshots. And I think what you're saying is right, that it doesn't, somebody who is not sophisticated in how studies are done may want each piece to tie to each other. And I think one of the things you're saying is that in some way they are snapshots that might not identically fall one on top of the other. Is that fair?
Yes. I mean, I think there's a lot of internal consistency. But you're also right, Mark, and I really appreciate it, that on every question and the answers to it, you can see it from both sides. For example, on intermarriage and how intermarried couples versus in-married couples are raising their children. That's also really interesting. Among respondents to our survey who are Jewish, either Jews by religion or Jews of no religion, doesn't matter, among those who identify as Jewish, 96% of those who have a fellow Jewish spouse are raising their children Jewish in some way. Now, if you look at the intermarried couples in which a Jewish respondent is married to a non-Jew, more than half of them, actually a little more than 60% of them, say they are raising their children Jewish in some way. So
I'm sorry, say that again.
So more than 60% of the Jews in our survey who are intermarried, who have a non-Jewish spouse, say, and who have minor children at home, say they are raising those children as Jewish in some way.
Okay, forgive me. I think you're misquoting your study, because what I see here in front of me, the numbers show more than 60% are raising their children either partly Jewish or not Jewish at all. Your study seems to show 20% of intermarried couples are raising their children as Jews, and another 25% of your respondents who are intermarried said they are raising their children partly Jewish. That's
Right.
20 and 25.
Right.
That's 45%.
Right.
It's
And
not
then
more
there's
than
another
60.
60% next to that who are raising the children in some mixture of Jewish and something else.
Right, that's 45% total.
No, that's 45 plus another 17. It's 62%, rounds to 62%. Believe me, I know the study.
Yes, by the
So
way,
it's-
I am
so 20%
very impressed now. You quote numbers here, and you don't have them in front of you. I've got them in front of me. But that I must be missing another category.
The other category there is the 17%.
And what do the 17% represent?
It's a mixture. It's people who say they're raising their children in some mixture of Jewish and something else.
And that's not the partly Jewish number?
So look, we could parse these categories, but suffice it to say, it is more than 60% of the couples, of the respondents who are intermarried, who say they are raising their children Jewish in some way. 20% are raising those children straightforwardly in the Jewish faith and in no other Jewish faith. An additional 25%, for a total of 45%, say they are raising their children either only in the Jewish faith or by religion in the Jewish faith, at least partially. And an additional 17% on top of that, or a total of 62%, rounding because the numbers round,
Okay.
say they're raising their children in some mix. But 37% approximately say they are not raising their children Jewish at all. So a majority of the intermarried respondents are raising their children Jewish in some way, but a little more than a third are not raising their children Jewish in any way. And
Yes.
that's two sides of the coin.
That's right.
That's the point.
I think, again, a very perceptive point. And again, you can look at it and say, oh my goodness, 37% of intermarried Jews are not raising their children Jewish at all. Or you can say, oh my goodness, more than 60% of intermarried couples are in some way raising themselves as Jewish. And again, that's not your role to comment on that, but it is an interest. Your point is it's an interesting factor. Was there anything in this study, Alan, that you saw the results and you said, "Oh my goodness, I never thought that would be"?
No, there are certainly some things that are a little bit surprising to me personally. Not shocking, but a little bit surprising, and maybe even good news for the Jewish community. For example, younger Jews report attending synagogue at the same rates as older Jews. Their reported synagogue attendance is no lower. Among a lot of religious groups in the United States, younger members of the groups do report attending church services at lower rates than older groups. Also, we asked people about their Hebrew language ability, and we asked a bunch of questions about it. It won't surprise you that about half of American Jews overall say they know the alphabet, but far fewer say that when they read Hebrew, they actually can understand most or all of the words. And we asked some other questions about Hebrew, but here's my point on Hebrew. We actually have higher self-reported Hebrew language ability among younger Jews than among older Jews. So if I were a Hebrew language educator or a Jewish educator, I might look at that and say, well, the numbers are lower than I would like, but at least they're moving in the right direction. So there are some very interesting findings that people might not think of. Another one, where I said, and I apologize, I didn't mean this in a bad way, but I said you'd contradicted yourself. It was, Mark, because you said that you said something to the effect about being secular or not being Jewish in any way, not being Jewish, and then said something about people being Jewish is a matter of ethnicity or family. And indeed, what we see is that most Jews think that being Jewish is not mainly a matter of religion. It is a matter mainly of ancestry or culture. And we asked Jews whether you can be Jewish if you don't believe in God. And 2/3 of Jews said yes, including 2/3 of people who identify their religion as Jewish. And I would say that that's not such a surprising finding, that in fact the long tradition in Judaism is that being Jewish it's a religion of practice in many ways and not a religion of belief. It's good to believe in God if you're Jewish, if you will, but it hasn't always been seen as essential. It's essential to be Jewish, to be part of the community, to participate, to follow the mitzvot, etc. But believing may not play the same role for Jews that it does in some other religions, and the survey shows that.
By the way, that is a very important point. I am so glad you mentioned it. And you're a very perceptive Jewish guy, Alan, in addition to being a great demographer, et cetera. Look, 67%, according to your study, 60% of American Jews say it is not necessary to believe in God to be Jewish. This does not mean 67% don't believe in God, but 67% recognize that a belief in God is not the determinative factor in whether one is Jewish or not. And I find that to be, first of all, I'm very pleased at that number, and I think it reflects the insight of the Jewish tradition, and I hope people who read the study are struck by the fact that even people who believe there is a God do not feel that it is the determining factor, and that if a Jew does not believe in God, Therefore, it somehow rules him out. Belief in God is, as you say, Alan, very important in the Jewish tradition, but it is not the defining factor. And if somebody does not believe in God, it doesn't mean they're not a Jew, which is why I took some issue with the way in which you were associated agnostic and atheist with people who have no religion, though I understand you clarified it well. You're really reflecting what people say to you when asked the question, do you have a religion?
Exactly.
And so I appreciate that very much. Let me ask you one more. I want to share one that surprised me.
Sure.
You tell me if it surprised you. You asked people the extent to which they feel attached to Israel. And your survey showed that 60% of American Jewry does not feel very attached to Israel. About, you say 30 to 39%. Let's round it off and simply say 40 to have 100%. Some 40% feel they are attached to Israel. I found the number to be very high, 60%, among those who do not feel attached to Israel. Any comment?
Yes. Again, two sides of the coin. And actually, the question that we asked is, how strong is your emotional attachment to Israel? Would you say you are very attached, somewhat attached, not too attached, or not at all attached? Now, you've looked only at the highest category, very attached, and there are about 40%, actually 39%, who say they're very attached. But there's another 30% who say they're somewhat attached. So if we put those two categories together and then compare them to those who said they're not too attached or not at all attached, then it's more than two-thirds who I would say, the way I would analyze it is, more than two-thirds of American Jews say they are at least somewhat attached to Israel emotionally.
Was I wrong?
And you can look at it. You can look at all sides of the coin.
Yes,
there.
I understand. I just want to know if I read the study wrong. Did it say that 60% of American Jews do not feel very attached?
Well, you could look at it that way, but what we would actually say is that 69% feel somewhat attached or very attached.
I see.
I would say 31% do not feel attached. 31% either say they are, quote, not too attached or, quote, not at all.
Okay, that is very helpful, very helpful. Also, it says that 43% of American Jews have visited Israel, and you point out 23% even more than once,
Yep.
which I assume means, Alan, 57% of American Jews have never visited Israel. Is that correct?
Sure, 43% have, 57% have not. But 43% having gone to Israel, it's expensive to go to Israel. That's that number, I think, seems to me remarkably high.
Yes, I was surprised it was that high.
23% have visited more than once. Those are pretty big numbers. It's also very high numbers among youth, reflecting, among other things, the Taglit birthright program that has brought so many young Jews over. We have really high numbers of younger people. Generally speaking, of course, younger people don't have as much money, and so you would expect to see more foreign travel by older people than by younger people. In the Jewish community, there's a lot of travel to Israel by younger Jews.
40% of your survey said, Jews said 40% that the land of Israel was given to the Jews by God. 40%, Alan,
Yes.
think that Israel was given by God
Yes.
to the Jewish people?
Now, let me tell you a couple of funny things about that. First of all, that's 40% of American Jews think that God was given to answer the question and say they think that the land of Israel was given by God to the Jewish people. You know what it is among Christians in the United States overall?
What?
50%. You know what it is among evangelical Christians, white evangelical Protestants? 80%. So white evangelical Protestants are twice as likely as self-identified Jews in the United States to say that the land of Israel was given by God to the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm. What do
Now,
you,
that question, by the way, was filtered. We earlier raised the question of belief in God. We only asked that question of those of those Jews who had previously affirmatively told us in the survey that they do believe in God. And so I will tell you, it's 72% of American Jews who say they do believe in God.
72%.
Right. Now, you can't immediately flip that on its head and say 28 do not, because it's actually 23% who say they do not, and 5% who say they don't know or decline to answer the question. So it's 23% of American Jews say they don't believe in God, 5% decline to answer the question, and 72% say yes, they do believe in God.
Do you find that number high, 72%?
Well, it's lower than in the American public as a whole, but on many standard measures of religiosity, Jews are lower in religiosity. By religiosity, I mean how religious people are, not what religion they are, but how religious they are. And standard ways of measuring religiosity include things like asking people, how important is religion in your life? Would you say it's very important, somewhat important, not too important, or not at all important? And Jews say that at lower levels. There's 56% of the American public says religion is very important in their lives. Now, if you look at, by the way, on many of these measures, we're talking very broadly, Mark, about Jews as a whole. When you look at, for example, Orthodox Jews, it's a very different picture. Orthodox Jews are extremely religious, of course, as you would expect, highly observant. And they are very likely to say that religion is very important in their lives. And they are on any measures of religiosity, including how often they say they attend religious services and how important religion is in their lives. They're on a par with white evangelical Protestants. But Jews as a whole are lower. They are less religious by common markers of this in surveys than the U.S. public as a whole.
I have a hard time believing that 72% of American Jews say they believe in God.
Do you think
when there is such a high percentage of non-affiliation in the Jewish community? You've got 30%.
Right. Now, non-affiliation non-affiliation isn't a belief measure. Non-affiliation in this measure is simply a matter of whether people actually identify with a particular stream of Judaism. And
okay,
again,
let me put it a different way. 22% of American Jews say they have no Judaisms.
Right.
So you're telling me that it's only about another 10 or so percent of all the rest of American Jews who don't believe in God. I just find that hard to believe. I find it hard to believe that there are not many, many Jews who are part of synagogue life for whom God is not the issue. I mean, 67%.
Sure.
They say 67% say God is not essential to whether one's a Jew or not.
Right.
But lo and behold, it seems to me that your study also says at the same time, the vast number of affiliated Jews say they do believe in God.
Well, but I think you're mixing categories. And again, one reason why we ask all these questions, and you can look in the data and see how well these things line up. They don't line up perfectly. Just because someone is not affiliated, that is, they don't say that they belong to one of the major streams of Judaism, such as Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, or one of the other streams, Reconstructionist, Jewish Renewal, whatever. Just because they say they don't belong to any of those streams doesn't mean they're not religious, doesn't mean they don't believe in God, doesn't even mean they aren't necessarily a synagogue member, although it corresponds very closely with synagogue membership. So these are different measures, and we ask all these different things, and indeed you can confuse people by sort of saying, well, if you're one, then you got to be the other, but in fact, they don't always line up.
Okay, I understand, and that was a good point you made. I just want to make sure we understand. 22% of your respondents began by saying they have no religion, which you basically say means they've said they have no religion, or they may be either agnostic or atheist. Is that correct?
Yeah, atheist, agnostic, or they've said nothing in particular. And actually, the biggest chunk of the 22% are just people who said their religion is nothing in particular.
Okay, I believe probably those 20%, the main of them, would say they don't believe in God.
Well, actually, sorry, but you'd be wrong. And I can tell you this in the general public as well. You know, in the American public, these figures for Jews are not so different from the American public as a whole. In the American public as a whole, 20% of Americans today say they have no particular religion. They're atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. But 2/3 of that 20% do say they believe in God.
Well, how many are agnostic or atheist then? If they begin by saying they're atheist and agnostic.
Right. So it's about 5% or 6% of the American public today is atheist or agnostic. And it's about 15% who are nothing in particular.
Okay, interesting. Finish the Israel section. 62% of American Jews seem to think Israel is not making sincere efforts for peace. Is that how your study shows?
Well, we didn't ask it about Israel. We asked about Israeli leaders, and that is important. And so 38%, if I recall the figure off the top of my head,
You are correct.
Said they do think Israeli leaders are sincerely seeking peace. By the way, 12% said they think Palestinian leaders are sincerely seeking peace. So I would say that we're seeing a fair amount of skepticism among Israeli Jews, among American Jews, about the sincerity of both Israeli and Palestinian leaders, particularly a lot of skepticism about Palestinian leaders, but even a fair amount of skepticism about the degree to which Israeli leaders are, at this time, sincerely seeking peace with the Palestinians.
Yes, I was very surprised that it was that high in terms of the skepticism American Jews have of Israeli leaders. Again, 62% of American Jews are saying that they do not feel Israeli leaders are sincere in making efforts for peace. All right, we're almost out of time. Let me ask you a couple of quick questions and I'll let you go. It's so nice of you, and you're terrific, Alan. Thank you. Am I correct that in your study it shows that among the affiliated Jews, roughly Reform have about 35%, Conservative 18%, and Orthodox about 10%?
Yes, and let me talk about that Orthodox percent, because this is really interesting. So Orthodox make up about 10% of of our net Jewish category, and that includes of the non-religious Jews, if you will, of those Jews of no religion. Okay? They make up 12%, the Orthodox make up 12% of Jews by religion, people who say their religion is Jewish. They make up 22% of synagogue members. Okay? So the identification with a stream, that is, we say to people, do you consider yourself Orthodox, Conservative, Reform? That's one thing. Synagogue membership is different. 22% of all synagogue members are Orthodox. And that's just adults. One thing we see in the survey that just jumps out, leaps out at you from the data, is that the Orthodox have much larger families on average, and they're younger. So clearly they should be growing on a demographic basis. And so if we were to, it's hard to know synagogue membership among children. We didn't ask about children's synagogue membership. But if we were to try to extrapolate synagogue membership to all ages, then I'm sure that the Orthodox make up more than 22% of all synagogue members of all ages. And if we were to try to think about, and again, we can't actually measure this in the survey, what percentage of all the Jews who are in shul on any given Friday night or Saturday morning are Orthodox, then I'm sure that it would also be much higher than 22%. So they're 10% of the streams by identification, but in many ways the Orthodox make up a much bigger proportion than that of religiously active synagogue-going Jews.
Yes, and again, I'm not putting any value judgment here. I'm just trying to understand the numbers.
Correct.
What you have is, if 22% of synagogue attending Jews are Orthodox, it means that 78% of synagogue attending Jews are not Orthodox.
Yeah, synagogue members, correct. 79% of the individuals.
Okay, so 78% are non-Orthodox.
Correct.
Then there's a finding which really surprised me, but maybe I misread it. Your study seemed to say that 50% of those who are raised Orthodox, Jews raised in Orthodox homes, 50% say they leave Orthodoxy.
Yes. What we did in the survey is we asked people both what is their religion today and what streams do they identify with, et cetera, and we asked how they were raised. And then you put the two things together. And of the respondents who told us they were raised Orthodox, today only 48% are still Orthodox. We did look at that, though, by age group, and this is a really interesting finding, I think, and it corresponds well to what I think many people have understood about the Orthodox community. If you look at older Jews, Jews over the age of 65, of the Jews over age 65 who say they were raised Orthodox, only 22% are today Orthodox. Mm-hmm. Of the Jews between the ages of 18 and 29, young Jewish adults who say they were raised Orthodox, 83% are still Orthodox.
Yes, but you understand, those you ask who are now 65 were one-time 18-year-olds and were one-time 29-year-olds.
Right.
And
so
if you talk to them then, they may have said the same thing.
No, I don't think so.
Why? Why?
Well, you are right that there are two ways, essentially two ways that you could understand this data. One way is you could think of it, as a sociologist would call it, a life cycle effect, that just as people get older, they gradually move away from orthodoxy. That could explain the data. But, and I can't prove otherwise just from the data. But a number of experts that we've talked to, people expert on the Jewish community and particularly on orthodoxy, don't think that that's actually
okay. But Alan, you're crossing a line. We're only looking at what the numbers show. You and I are not supposed to be interpreting at the moment.
Well,
and you said it. You said it honestly. You've talked to people in the Jewish world who want to believe, and by the way, for all I know, they're right. I only know this, that it's you can't compare apples and oranges. 60-year-olds and 17-year-olds are different. It may have been, again, that when you talk to these people in their teens or early 20s, they may have still been part of the Orthodox community.
That is absolutely possible.
Okay.
But let me throw an alternative interpretation, and that's what it is, an interpretation. And I'm not saying it's true, but I think that your viewers should hear it. And that is, there are folks who say that people who came of age from Orthodox households, who came of age in the 1940s and the 1950s and the 1960s, even into the 1970s, they left Orthodoxy in droves. And in fact, they'll say that many of the people back in those days, sort of the default in American Judaism was that your home was Orthodox. And everybody in those days thought of themselves as having grown up in Orthodox homes, or almost everybody, and then they left Orthodoxy in droves. And we'll say that, but that's not the case for people who came of age in the 80s and the 90s and the aughts. That those people who were raised in Orthodox homes and became adults in those eras stayed Orthodox in much larger numbers. So you tell me, or your viewers ask themselves whether that rings true or not. I can tell you, in my father's generation, my father was raised in an Orthodox home, kosher home, truly kosher home, and yet he did not stay in Orthodoxy. And he was later president of a Reformed synagogue, so he didn't leave Judaism by any means, but he did move out of Orthodoxy.
How old was he when he left Orthodoxy?
That's an excellent question. I think it was when he entered the Navy. I would say it was after he was a medical doctor. It was probably after medical school at the time that he entered the Navy. And I think in those days, frankly, in the Navy, I don't even think kosher, in 1938, I don't think kosher meals were available in the Navy.
Yes, yes. Alan, this is a fabulous study, and you are wonderful to talk to. I'm now sorry that we didn't have you in studio. You stayed longer on the phone than I ever dreamed you would, and I am very, very grateful. And I appreciate both the analysis of how the study was done and how you caution us about how to read it. And I hope everybody goes out. First of all, they should visit your website, and they should see the study, and we on Shalom TV will continue this. And maybe at some point I'll ask you to join me again.
I would love that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. You're wonderful. Be well. And those are the thoughts of Alan Cooperman, who is the Deputy Director of the Pew Research Center and their Religion and Public Life Project. And you heard him commenting on Pew Research Center's study of American Jewry. And again, we will be following this and doing many programs on this on Shalom TV and trying to look at how Jewish leaders view its results and what they feel it suggests about the Jewish future as well as the present, and what troubles them the most, and what are some of the affirmative things that this study points out about American Jewish life today. Of course, as always, I'd love to know what you think. Let me have your reactions to my conversation with Alan Cooperman. Please email me, write me, post it on our Facebook wall, and tweet me. I look forward to hearing from you. My thanks to Sloan Copeland and Serge Goldberg. Fabulous job, gentlemen. And to the producer of this edition of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.